Hey folks, welcome back. I hadn't felt like recording very many videos lately or doing very much of anything on social media after my last live, which probably isn't that long ago, but yeah, I haven't felt like doing much, so I thought I would come on and do something a little bit different instead and just see how it felt. And so, as you can see, I decided to come on and talk about the Tower card. And this is specifically the Tower card from the Brady Tarot. It's my cat making sure that editing is always necessary. Other than looking at the visual and perhaps my hands flicking around, there really isn't anything to see here. So if you just want to listen, then that's fine too. I can't imagine this is going to be a long discussion. I just really wanted to muse on a few things. And so really my concept of coming to talk about the Tower today was this feeling that I'm not sure the Tower is always a necessary crumbling in the way that we sometimes can view it. And I often wonder if we've kind of love and lighted our way around some of these archetypes, glamorizing the retrospective view or the place we might eventually end up over the experience at hand. I often used to think of the Tower as quite fast, or at least faster than I have more recently. But the more I ponder on it, the more I realise how the major archetypes especially can really unfurl over months and can exist for significant durations, at least if I consider the tarot through a life lens rather than trying to fit myself into it or focusing solely on cards that, appear in my readings. Because when I pull cards, why and what I'm asking can be incredibly nuanced, and overall kind of really big picture energies don't always immediately shine through. And I will explain a bit about why as well. But this is speaking from experience. Perhaps you'll find it different. For me, I don't pull cards with as much regularity as when I first returned to reading the tarot. And I like to work with what I've taken from a spread for longer durations. That's not always, but it does tend to be the way for me. And so things like repeating cards and themes, again, they may take some time to appear. Not that that's always necessary. Sometimes one appearance is enough to bring that kind of into more conscious awareness, and I suppose that's the best way I can encapsulate it in such a generalized way. As I've been contemplating the unfurling of some archetypes, specifically the Tower, I just feel like the Tower can also be really slow, in the harrowing way that it can take days to put out a wildfire or just a large fire. And then it's not just a matter of completion after that. That's kind of phase one or a part of phase one. There's the rubble, there's what's left, there's further exploration or removal or, clearing, but not in kind of that upbeat sense of like, Marie Kondo your life. There's that realization of what fell, what's gone, what the process has left in its wake, and all of the sensations and emotions that this has stirred. And one of the reasons why I feel like the Brady Tarot is a great representation of all of these layers is, whilst the lightning is fast, although the storm could have been building for some time, there's then everything that happens after this snapshot. This is just a moment in time. This tree home to all of these woodpeckers in this instance, is now taken back to pretty much its roots, and the ground around it is likely pretty charred. And so there's that awareness that, or that knowledge that new growth can be promoted by the aftermath of a fire. That's very true, but it's not a miracle speed. It doesn't change what happens either. Any nutrients restored or provided to the soil, you know, that's going to take time to take effect. And often what we can see appears incredibly dormant, at least for a while. And that's even if we're looking around after the wreckage. I will add that this is not to say there aren't quicker and more microcosmic, mundane expressions of the tower in our everyday life. I try not to repeat myself too often, especially around my approach to the cards, because I've done videos on that. But I believe that they have incredible versatility and can speak to big or small experiences through various nuances. But I really felt the urge to speak to this slow unfurling and really sometimes the pain and what happens after this. You know, because after isn't just the next card in the majors to me or whatever just comes up next. It's a journey and a process, and there's those liminal steps before moving from something significant to another, and perhaps even a crossing over for a time. And so for me, it's like, what about when the tower comes in waves and parts, and these all build up into this ultimate finale? And that's when the realization hits. That's when the sensation happens. That's when the nervous system kind of realizes, fuck, I need something to get through, to help. I need to do something, whatever that realization is. But as busy humans, you know, it's easy to be a creature of habit and forget self or communal care when everything is well. I often wonder, actually, if we're more compassionate when our shit is on fire or when it recently has been. And I don't mean always. I try to steer clear of absolutes, but just sometimes, especially if it's been a while, if the last event's fortunately very far away and we begin to see these as like other people issues, not shit that happens to us, or that kind of mentality occurring anyway, and it being easy to fall into kind of individualizing too much in those instances and kind of othering. And I'm not suggesting that that means, yay, the tower came, you know, just remarking on how our compassion and interest can be conditional in this way sometimes. I don't know, that probably won't go down well, but that's okay. It's hard to explain some of these without spending exorbitant amounts of time on them. But back to this slow unfurling, then there's the potential of resistance. So I don't want to see this. I didn't order this reality, and quite frankly, I won't be accepting the delivery. Mark the package as owner, not home. Quite personally, I, for one, know that I can cling to what's essentially dead, like it's the dearest thing to me in the world. And you know, because sometimes it is as well. And even when it's not, or if it is, you know, adding to that suffering through refusal, or perhaps stoking the fire because old habits die hard. And the more I think about it, there's this really confronting layer of responsibility to the tower. Not merely about like assigning blame or victim shaming if relevant, but really being willing to be open to recognising if this particular experience with the tower has a part of us in the process, in the occurrence. And I feel like the realisation and the lifting of illusions that comes with this, again, it isn't necessarily immediate, because there's all these feelings too. And it makes me wonder if tarot has become a little fast overall. Sometimes. I don't know another word, so I feel like I'm saying sometimes a lot. But what I'm referencing is those times where it's like bouncing between cards and readings and kind of forgetting the invitation into the underneath and the well-being and the developmental facets. And yes, you can just have fun with the cards too. Two things can be true. I do hate feeling like I need to add those disclaimers, so I probably will start steering clear from them. For me, I actually really enjoy finding the joy in tough cards and the challenge in the nourishing cards, and I really like to kind of flex and bend their stories for as far as it makes sense and explore all the potentials, even the lesser known ones. Not always in one reading, but certainly if I'm just reflecting on a card in particular as well. But I also feel that some cards have, like, I don't know, if there's a pendulum, they've sort of swung into a bit too much for me, a bit too much softness over the years. And maybe them feeling harsh or being misunderstood years back led to that natural trajectory of that pendulum swing. I'm leaning into less of what the tower can, bring in the future, or what it may be making way for further down the line, and a little bit more of what it feels like now, followed by what it brought with it, what occurs. And speaking of what occurs, I know that the star card is next if we follow the Fool's journey, but even that isn't all magic and wonder. Again, for me, there's actually quite a lot of blind faith in the star card, or it feels more like seeking to, I suppose, re-engage with my North Star, the heart of the navigational system within us. And that can be damn hard, especially after the former has just happened. We're talking trust in the face of destruction, and that's not always easy to muster, especially if it's a time when it feels all too familiar. What if this tower feels like a repeat? And again, we learn to walk away in this experience in a very different way than the process of perhaps a card like death. This thing might not look finished either. There's all this space. There could even be what feels like potential, and perhaps that's not for us. And so in the tower, there's also, sometimes it feels like a decision to be made that's not always defined by that crumbling process, that initial bit. And I suppose thinking about the benefits or things that we gain from difficult experiences or the tower, even the moments that shape our resistance can have pain and loss. So while I might in that instance be thankful or find something of worth, it may not change the fact that I didn't welcome the experience. And so when I'm right in the midst of the experience, I'm not even thinking about the retrospective. Also, because I really believe that we can take away something from an event or change our life trajectory and still wish the very thing that occurred hadn't occurred. It's not that black and white. And in the same vein, we don't have to find thanks for everything. I really feel that, we can move on, we can live in the present without showing gratitude for every past moment of our lived life. At least I know I can. We may have really needed this to take place because there's a spectrum of possibility within the card. So I do want to acknowledge that, like I say, whilst I'm honing in on a particular experience and expression of the tower, because it's the one that really came through for me, there is, of course, other experiences of it, like I said. But in essence, with this instance, it's not always what fell, but why. What's left, and is it for us? And then where to and how? Just a little note on self-development before I run out of thoughts. which might be surprising and hopefully doesn't sound too contradictory. I'll try and explain. I don't believe that any level of sort of, again, self-development, because it's a familiar term, or work on ourselves, whatever you want to call it, healing, therapeutic, cathartic processes, I don't believe that these ensure each of these experiences becomes more manageable. I do understand, believe, you know, subscribe to how helpful that can be. Otherwise, I wouldn't work in anything developmental, which I do. But it's more about how it can help rather than it being a promise. Something that was a 𝗤𝗲 moment before, if it occurred again, it didn't necessarily feel like a 𝗤𝗲 moment, or it didn't take up as much time, or it didn't have as much impact. But also, sometimes even after all the practice in the world, all the catharsis, one particular 𝗤𝗲 can absolutely surprise and shake the entire foundation that we're on. And I think that the surrender is, or it can be as much forced as it is those times when we're ready, because that's how life works, right? And if we have loads more manageable ones in the interim, that's great too. And that's kind of it, actually. I feel like that's everything I had to say. It's just some musings on the slower expressions with the 𝗤𝗲. I wasn't really trying to get anywhere or achieve anything with this. Just share some musings on a card that I was sitting with, and like I said, do something a little bit different because that's how I felt. So let me know what you think if you want to, and yeah, I'll see you again soon. Bye.